Battlefield 1 is getting EA anti-cheat. So EA has been working on their own anti-cheat, which I'm really glad. And they basically already applied that anti-cheat to Battlefield 2042. They already applied it to Battlefield 25. And they just apply... No, sorry. They're going to apply this month EA their own anti-cheat to Battlefield 1. That's fantastic. I'm kind of glad they're going back to their old games and applying anti-cheat to those games. That's fantastic. I love that. And it's amazing that they're doing that, and nice to know that we're gonna have some sort of decent... I mean, don't get me wrong, you can never remove cheaters from the game because it's a mouse and cat and mouse game. It's always ongoing battle. But just the fact they're going back to their old games and applying that anti-cheat, they have no reason to apply that anti-cheat to all games. They have no reason to apply it to Battlefield 1. And now I'm wondering if they're gonna do it to Battlefield 4, and maybe they don't. I don't think they will though, just because the way Battlefield 4 works is so different from Battlefield 1, because you can control your own server, admins, and so on. So it's a bit different experience. Because Battlefield 1 is all first party, so EA is responsible for everything, the servers and everything. So I think that's why they need the anti-cheat. But I'm so glad they're actually doing that, and looking forward to that anti-cheat being available in the next game, in the future Battlefield game, Battle Royale and all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, I'm glad they're doing that, and they may be probably doing some testing, see what works, what doesn't, and so on, and that's great. Secure games, that's fantastic. I have to give props to EA to that. So applying EA anti-cheat, or whatever it's called, to their old games, fantastic. So speaking of Battlefield 1, I played Battlefield 1 recently. Well, recently, like a month ago, because there's a live stream of me playing Battlefield 1, so please go to my channel, Lanky Soldier, TheLankySoldier. And Battlefield 1, to this day, visually still looks amazing. Still a very nice looking game. I remember I was not a fan of the controls back in 2016 when the game came out. I was not a fan of the controls. It's not perfect, but it's fine. You kind of need to get used to and that kind of stuff. And when I played Battlefield 1, it made me realize that how many small things we never had back then that we have right now. So when you play Battlefield 1, a game that was made in 2016, right? Really is 2016. You play the game and you realized, oh, you can't really reload while you're ADS, or you can't really do certain things like that you can do in modern games. Just the small things, quality life stuff that we used to right now in all first-person shooters. It's not in Battlefield 1, and that's gonna get a little bit like, oh wow, this clearly did not age well. And it's quite amazing to think about, like, oh wow, we never had that, and how? You would imagine 2016, like, still consider, probably a lot of people still consider Battlefield 1 one of the best Battlefields out there, even though I think Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4 is there. Battlefield 1 is, it's still a visually good looking game. I remember the maps being bigger, but they're actually quite small. And then as I was going through the old Battlefield podcast of mine that we hosted back in the day, we talked about Battlefield 1 and everything. Yeah, I remember not being a fan of Battlefield 1 maps for many reasons, because I think they were not that good. And as I played Battlefield 1 again, yeah, I don't think they're good. I really don't think they're good. Like, they do their own purpose, because the philosophy they went with Battlefield 1, I think, well, that's on purpose why they went with that philosophy, is it's like big map, right? Like, you have your 64 players, but the map was really like designed to be like, oh, really big at the first, but when you push in towards the other flags, you push towards the enemy flags or whatever, like in the middle of the map, the maps get narrow, and I think the reason is to design this, like, sell this idea that, hey, this is World War One. This is, there's front lines and everything. You can't just flank and everything. You could not do that, because it's just like you will get shot. So I think, and because it's an arcade, it's not really a representation of how World War One went and everything. Of course not. It's arcade first person shooter. but just the fact that like when you spawn in your base, the map is huge, right? But as you go forward, push towards the flag, the middle flag and so on, the map gets narrow. And that's all the players, both teams meet, they start to shoot each other, there's barely any flanking routes and everything, you need to use a bloody tank and be a little bitch and take all the damage, and hopefully your teammates can push and capture the flag. So that was the idea. I understand why they went with kind of map design philosophy. Fully understand that. I get it. It's World War I. We kind of need to create this immersion and everything. So when it comes to immersion, Battlefield 1 is quite immersive, even to this day. Like 8 years, well, almost 9 years, 8 years later, Battlefield 1 is still a very immersive experience. You can hear the soldiers screaming and all that kind of stuff, the gunshots, the sound effects and everything, the presentation of the game, the music, all that stuff. It's immersive. The presentation is on point. It's like, yeah, this is a game with an ambition, with a message, with a specific art style, specific design idea, what it wants to sell. So that's why, like, when I review games, for example, a lot of first-person shooters, I always look the way I look at Battlefield 1. I always look, hey, what this game is trying to sell, what this game is trying to tell me, what's the idea behind this game. For example, the reason I was kind of worried about Delta Force, for example, that, like my friend Ray said, it might be like a splash in the pan moment for this game, Delta Force, because I was just looking at the game and everything, like, yeah, it's a good game, but what does it offer bigger than that? What's the idea? What's the plan? What's the ambition here? Why are you trying to tell me here? Like, yeah, it's a good first person shooter, but what else you try? Like, what's the idea? Like, what's the immersion idea? What's the message and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's how I look at video games. It's because it's a piece of art. Delta Force to me is like a very generic shooter, but it's a very good shooter, which is nice. But I always worry that it might not have the staying power that people might think you have. So we'll see. But Battlefield 1 definitely makes people remember how immersive and how amazing Battlefield 1 was. Even though when the Battlefield 1 came out back in the day, I was hosting Battlefield 1 podcast back then, like the original podcast show. And me and Wesley were talking about it last episode. And me and Ray actually talked about it loads of time. It was a lot, especially Ray. Ray can talk about Battlefield 1 a lot. It was missing a lot of features that we got used to in Battlefield 4, for example. Battlefield 1 was like, I always thought it was going to be like, yeah, it's not a reboot, but it's like a sidestep to the franchise. We want to do this side thing, and maybe build from there. So, it's not a reboot or whatever. It's a side thing. It's a sidestep. And from that sidestep, we can just try to build on, see what we can do in the future. Then Battlefield 5 came out. It was a completely different story. But yeah, Battlefield 1, I love the presentation. I love the atmosphere and everything. But yeah, I never really liked Battlefield 1 for the level design, because it just forces you into tunnels, but I understand why they did that, because it was World War I. I get that. Atmosphere is still amazing to this day. Although, Conquest was horrible. Conquest in Battlefield 1 was really horrible for this reason, because the scoring system is shit. It's very fake, very artificial. Because, for example, I don't know if people realize that, but I remember I made a video. I know you can find the video on my YouTube channel. Like, I don't know how old is that. Like, it's a really old video, but you can find it. And I think it's called Battlefield 1 Conquest is Broken or something like that. And I basically showcased in that video how Conquest is so broken in Battlefield 1. Because even you might not be having the majority of the control of the flags for the majority of the match. Like, let's say there's 5 flags on the map. Enemy controls 3 flags, and you control 2 flags. You still can win the game just fine by controlling 2 flags. Under no circumstances that should be a thing. But the way the scoring works, and the way, it was calculated, it was it was created to present this idea like, oh, the games are very close and so on, like, oh, teams fought well and so on. No, it was not. It was just created to create this illusion that the games are very close, but they're not. And it was really frustrating when you're playing really, really good and you still lose. Just because the game said, no, we have to give this other team a chance. I'm sorry, no. That's manipulation, which is much worse than skill-based matchmaking in Call of Duty. I'm sorry. At least skill-based matchmaking might not be perfect, but it doesn't manipulate games. At least not in that way. Like, if you're good enough, you'll win. If you're not, well, sorry. We'll give you a little, kind of lesser opponents. In here, doesn't matter how good or bad you are. No. Was designed to be some sort of keep teams in close no matter what. It was really weird. It did not. I remember that in BattlefieldOne CT, they kind of tried to change it. They tried to change the system, and I remember I played on that server where we had a normal scoring system, but I don't know why they never went with it. Something did not work. I don't remember what was the excuse, what was the problem, but they never went with it, which is kind of unfortunate. But yeah, Battlefield 1 scoring system in Conquest was so freaking bad. I don't want to experience it ever again in my life. It's so bad. I'll take skill-based matchmaking in Call of Duty any day over whatever this abomination was. And I remember when I was at the Battlefield 1 reveal event, and I went to the reveal event and then the LA event to record footage. When I went to Battlefield 1 recording EA Play, the event? When I went to record, and we played Battlefield 1 Alpha behind closed doors, then I remember I went to the lead developer and said, listen, the Battlefield 1 Conquest is not good. It's just not. It doesn't look, it doesn't work well. It's just that I got some explanation why they did it. I get that, but I really do not like that system. I never liked it, and I don't know if Battlefield 5 had the same system though. Actually, I didn't even know how Conquest scoring system works in Battlefield 2042. I don't know if it works the same way. I don't think it does. But no one really cared about Battlefield 2042 that much. No one really paid attention to it. I kind of wanted to see it, actually. So, yeah, Battlefield 1 Conquest scoring system was so bad. I don't want to do that ever again. But yeah, Battlefield 1, amazing game. It's just aged kind of well. Visually still looks fantastic. Control-wise, it's alright. Was never a big fan of the maps, but I always treat Battlefield 1 as like I said, a sidestep, a little step to the side, just try to do something different, because back then releasing a World War 1 shooter was suicide to a lot of people, and it's quite amazing that Battlefield 1 actually succeeded in a lot of cases, and I'm glad. That's the power of Battlefield if done right. I was not the biggest fan of Battlefield 1, but that's okay. And for people that are new here and still listening, let me tell you, our podcast named Battlefield 1 is not because of this game. We took the name Battlefield 1 like 2 years before Battlefield 1 was announced. So, and then we heard that the game is called Battlefield 1. Oh boy, we got loads of traffic regarding that, so that's for sure. And I remember I was talking to one EA executive in person, like, listen, it's so funny that you guys took the name, because we had a Battlefield 1 podcast, and you guys decided to go with Battlefield 1 for the games. Like, yeah, we checked and nothing was copyright and so on. So yeah, like, we had a nice friendly chat. It's funny, but I literally went like, hey, boy, you stole our name. You know that, right? It's like, it was a funny, friendly conversation. But yeah, it's so funny that we actually, like, no one's gonna name the podcast Battlefield. They're never gonna release a Battlefield game called Battlefield 1. This is not happening. We can call the podcast Battlefield 1. The number one source for Battlefield news and all that kind of stuff, And then 2 years later, Battlefield 1 is announced. Yeah, like, interesting. There's a lot of things that we said and did were actually got applied to Battlefield games. For example, we talked about the attrition system that was in Battlefield 5 like a year or two before the game was announced too, so I don't fucking know. But maybe we always joke that some developers are listening to us and just like, yeah, write it down, that these guys have an idea. Like, okay. God knows, maybe if that's true or not. I don't know. I find that really, really funny.